Hello and welcome to Down to Earth TV. I am Richard Mahapatra and here with me today is Professor Pushpam Kumar. He is the Chief of Ecosystem Services Economics Unit of UNEP in Nairobi. Welcome Professor Kumar.
Thank you.
And Professor Kumar will be speaking about something which is now raging across the world, and it's very fundamental as well as very critical to understand and to take it forward. It's about whether GDP should be the only way to measure well-being or not, and why not in this polarized world when there is a great debate between environment and economy and development. The natural capital should not be factored into the mainstream GDP discourse. Professor Kumar, I'll start with few very fundamental questions on GDP. Then I'll take you why economists like you, and you also come from a multilateral body like UNEP and leading a program that taking a new initiative of remeasuring the wealth and income and well-being. Let's start with the first question. Why GDP growth is not the sole measure of well-being? And with this also another question is that we have seen many opportunities, when you get an opportunity, say that there is a growth in GDP but not proportionate growth in the per capita wealth.
Right. Good. Thanks very much. Very happy to be here with you, Richard. To begin with, let's be very clear that GDP does many good things. It gives you the measurement of economic activities. It shows the scale of economic activities in the economy. So in that sense, it serves many purposes. But GDP miserably fails when we try to use this indicator to measure human well-being and social progress. Because well-being is much more than material minimum, the position of man-made capital. GDP measures material minimum very, very well, but it does not measure many other constituents of human well-being: good social relation, scenic beauty, social harmony, social progress. Of course, GDP is not well equipped to capture those aspects which are so critical for human well-being. Now, we should also remember that the history of GDP is not very old. It is less than 100 years. First time during the World War II, Keynes, the kind of GDP we use, or most of the countries in the world use, they started during World War II, Great Depression. And obviously that was the time when people were more concerned about the man-made capital, right? They were not concerned about natural capital, what we call now. During those days, they will call it bounty of nature or scenic beauty or free gift of nature sometimes. In fact, the word is wrong. There's nothing called free gift of nature. Even if it has been given to us at free of cost, in order to maintain them, in order to harvest the services, you need to invest some resource in them. Only then you can harvest them. So, but nonetheless, this came during World War II from Adam Smith, David Ricardo, John Stuart Mill. They were the conventional classical economists. And they gave this word, but they were concerned about nature. I think if you read their contribution, you will realize that John Stuart Mill is talking about the beauty of wilderness and the role of wilderness for humans. Similarly, David Ricardo is talking about the land, productivity of land, and he says that they are very important for human well-being. Somehow during World War and after that tradition we lost. And we became more focused towards man-made capital. And we didn't care much about the other types of capital which are important for human beings.
So when you say other type of capital and looking at your work and you being a champion of the natural capital, why, as you pointed out, somewhere we missed that natural capital aspect. Why we are remembering now natural capital and in fact pushing it to be the to be mainstream?
We are remembering because the way we have destroyed natural capital, they are becoming more and more scarce. Now they are not going to come to us as free gift of nature, what the classical economists used to call them. I mean, a society which destroys millions of hectares of forest every year, pumps billions of tons of carbons into atmosphere, erodes topsoil, erodes the coastal and marine biodiversity and ecosystem services. Obviously, we are at a juncture in human development where anthropocentric factors and drivers, if you want to call them, they are creating havoc. And the very base, what the economists call it, production possibility frontier, that is shrinking. And it is for anybody to see. We are in Delhi, we see the groundwater condition. Go to Punjab and see what is happening to the soil salinity, water logging, and that is the basis for agriculture. Punjab being what we call food basket of India, right? So that's why we have started questioning the way we are using some of the indicators to measure our progress. They are faulty. If your compass is wrong, you are bound to do a wrong reading. And if you are bound to do a wrong reading, you are bound to undertake wrong initiative, wrong intervention, wrong actions, and that is not going to be sustainable.
One of the wrong impression or the readings, going by your language, is that, as you point out, GDP growth is taking place across the world. Country like, I think, India is having the fastest growing economy.
One of the fastest
economy. But why not the per capita wealth? Is it because you are not factoring in the natural capital?
Now, right. So the GDP, I would say, its base is still very narrow. I mean, just to give you the example, and parallel example, GDP was popular and still it is popular. But why some of the indices like Human Development Index came into play? Because GDP was just focusing on the man-made capital. It was not focusing on the education, health issues, which HDI captures. Similarly, when we talk about wealth index, Inclusive Wealth Index, IWI, which has been published in Inclusive Wealth Report, published by UNU and UNEP, they talk about going beyond man-made capital, which GDP focuses on and captures natural capital and human capital. Human capital means education, health, and other factors. And of course, natural capital means the physical stock and resilience of nature, that is the fertility of soil, the availability of groundwater, surface water, coastal and marine resources, and many other and of course timber, logwood, and fisheries. But they were accounted earlier also. What I'm saying is new. So the other types of natural capital for which data hardly existed a few years ago from now.
Now it's, this quite going to be a very tough job, to first break into this GDP mold. What have been your experiences? How countries are actually accepting this as an idea, as a concept?
I think personally I'm extremely excited, and whatever history of national income calculation I know, at no point of time in the history of last 100 years, people have been talking, moving beyond GDP as they are doing now. You have a document called The Future We Want, which came from Rio Plus 20 in 2012. And paragraph 38 of Future We Want, they clearly says that member states, that 195 or 196 countries of the world, they have to put effort into the activities which sees them moving beyond GDP. You have inclusive wealth, and there are various parallel initiatives going all across the world. You have wealth accounts and valuation of ecosystem services coming from the World Bank and led by other institutions. Then you have comprehensive wealth accounts. You have green accounts, you have ecosystem account, you have natural capital accounting. So they basically, with some minor variations and changes, they are basically saying the same thing. However, what we have to remember that there is a huge demand from the policy makers and the political masters to see that our reliance on GDP is reduced, and we capture malign and benign all kind of impacts of nature on society. Why it is important? One more thing I would like to add, Richard, that many of the macroeconomic policies, why I am saying macroeconomic policies, because the drivers of change for nature emerges from the development sectors, trade, investment, export, import, and similar other factors. These are the guys who create land use change, who are responsible for disappearance of water bodies, for example, or export of aquaculture, for example. Destroying, I'm not saying always, all the time, in all contexts, but they have done in the past. Now they have stopped to some extent. So their progress and growth and activity is linked with the way we measure GDP. So once we correct GDP, we have high chance or high probability that we will be able to influence the constituents of development sectors and planning, which are responsible for resource allocation. And that's why correcting GDP or moving beyond GDP is must for all the countries of the world if we really want to see that our action should move towards measuring the progress and human well-being and not just material positions of man-made capital.
I think after a century of the GDP being adopted to measure the well-being, it's definitely at the crossroads. And just to take it further, I think it's a very valid and critical question now that the GDP must be revalued or redesigned, and the natural capital, which is the capital and the most critical capital for survival, must be factored into. Again, thank you very much, Professor Kumar. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.